Hey everyone. Sorry about that. You happen to catch me at feeding time. Welcome to the Bandlab. I'm your host, the professor. And this is a program where we talk about various tips, tricks, and techniques that we can use with the Bandlab mix editor. So let's get started. If you recall last episode, we had started a project, a simple 12-bar blues. We're going to continue with that. And one of the things we're going to look at is how to edit, basically edit out mistakes. It's inevitable that at some point when we're recording, we're going to make a fluff or two, bad notes, timing error, extraneous noises that we want to get rid of. So we're going to go through a couple of examples, see how we can fix these things. Other thing we're going to look at is an alternative to editing, where we might just want to re-record a section of something that we've previously recorded. We're happy with the overall performance, but there are a few bad spots, and we don't want to risk having to do it all again, and with possibly a worse performance or more mistakes that we have to deal with. So I want to re-record just a small section. We're going to use a technique called punching in to do this. And finally, while we're doing all this, I'll be discussing various keyboard shortcuts and few other features that we haven't touched on yet, and how to take advantage of these to improve our workflow and get some more work done more quickly. So I guess, why don't we just head over to the Bandlab mix editor and get ourselves started. All right, so here we are. We're in the mix editor, and we have our guitar tracks that we recorded in the previous episode. And now if you remember when I recorded this, there was a little section during the preview that I thought sounded a little off, but I was willing to let it go because this is a guide track that we will end up re-recording. So I said I'd let it go unless it got really annoying, and while I was preparing this episode, I had to listen to this track a few times, and it started to get really annoying. So I thought it would be a good exercise to go in and fix it. Now, I'm just going to play it, so refresh everybody's memories. It was somewhere around here. So that was the part. It's not a big deal. I could probably fix that with volume automation or something, so it's less obtrusive. But as I said, it's a good exercise. So what we're going to do, I really have two options. I can re-record it. I can re-record the entire track if I want, or just that little section. And later on, I'll demonstrate how we might want to record just a small section of an existing recording. But I don't want to go get the guitar, tune it again, go through the whole process of checking my levels, everything, just to replace one bad chord in a guide track that's going to end up being thrown out anyway. So what I'm going to do is replace that bad piece with some other section of the recording where I played essentially the same thing but played it better, and paste it in, and hopefully I'll be able to do it in a way that's not too obvious, and we can continue from there. So what we're going to do, a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to introduce the editor window here. This window we can open just by clicking on the editor button in the bottom left corner when we have a track or a region selected. Or we can simply double click on one and it'll open automatically. And while we have it open, we can simply select any region and that'll be highlighted here. So we'll start with this track. And if you recall, we just played that. Now, sometimes when we're editing or mixing, we often have to loop over a particular section of a recording because we want to pinpoint the exact spot, or we want to hear the changes that we're doing in real time. So we use what's called a cycle feature, which is this little loop type icon up here. A lot of Bandlab features can be turned on or off using shortcut keys. This is really convenient if you're like me, where you prefer using the keyboard to the mouse whenever possible. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we can also use the key to turn looping on or off. Bandlab calls this cycling, so it uses the C key. You press the C key, and as you can see, it turns on and off. I'm not using the mouse here, I'm using the keyboard. So when we have it on, you'll see a highlighted region up here on the ruler. And this tells us the section that it'll cycle over. We can resize this by dragging the edges of it. You see the cursor changes to a double arrow. Or we can just simply drag the cursor over a section to loop over that section. So this is around where our error was. We're going to set our loop to there. We have it turned on and we're going to play. And you see it, we'll just repeat this section now. Except that's not where the problem was, so we're going to stretch this out a little bit. Okay, so it's right there a little before bar 9. So what we're going to do, I guess, to start off is we're going to replace maybe this section between bar 8 and bar 9. That's a good area to start, and then we'll kind of fine-tune it from there. So all we have to do is find another section of a recording where we're playing essentially the same thing, only better. This is a 12-bar blues we recorded with the metronome, if you remember. And one of the reasons we used the metronome was that so that we'd have accurate timing. I'm going to go into our grid here. We have Snap to Grid turned on. And remember, we can turn that on or off from the menu. And we can turn it on or off using the G key as well. So this is convenient. So now we're going to come here, back to our grid. And the grid size, you'll notice by default it's set to Smart. Smart mode will adjust the grid size based on your zoom settings. The more you're zoomed out, the more detail you can get as far as the grid. But I prefer having it a fixed size so I know exactly where things are going to line up. This is an option completely up to you, whatever your preference is. But for now, I'm going to put it to bar like we did last time because I just want to grab a big chunk. So if you remember, we're going to replace between bar 8 and bar 9. So what I'm going to do is right here at bar 8, I'm going to split our track. And the way we do that is using this slice tool here. Just as with the other tools we've used, there is a keyboard shortcut to this. I just did it using the mouse and you see it's sliced. I'm just going to use Control Z to undo. A lot of the keyboard shortcuts in Bandlab are Windows shortcuts, ones that you see in basically every Windows application. So Control Z is undo. That's pretty universal. Shift Control Z is redo. Control C is copy. Control V is paste. Control X is cut. Control S to save. These are pretty standard, so I'm not going to go into detail about them. You may already use them, in which case you can use them in the Bandlab Mix Editor as well. If you don't use these keyboard shortcuts in other Windows applications, you probably won't use them here either. If you prefer using the mouse, that's always an option, whatever works for you. So I just did the slice using the mouse. If I use the keyboard, I just hit the S key while we have this highlighted, and it slices as well. So what I'm going to do is, now you remember we have this little, I'm just going to move the cursor out of the way a little bit. Why is it not letting me move the cursor? Okay, so I moved the cursor, I don't know what's going on. All right, so I'm just going to take this and I'm going to drag it, and the reason for that is because I still have the Snap to Grid turned on, so it was requiring me to move by a whole measure because that's what we have it set to. I forgot I was zoomed out so much. Here's another useful little tip. While it's great to have Snap to Grid turned on, there are times where you want to turn it off when you want to get more detail. And you don't always want to go up here turning it on or off using the mouse or hitting the G key. So another option is to use the Control key. If I press the Control key, you see the Snap to Grid while I'm pressing it turns off. So I can do any operation with the Control key turned off, you see, or sorry, pressed, and you see I have it pressed now, and it lets me move anywhere I want. As soon as I release the Control key, it starts snapping to grid again. So this is a great way if you just want to temporarily turn off Snap to Grid but leave it on as a default. Just remember, Control key does that for you. All right, so we've moved it out of the way. We've made a nice little opening for ourselves, one measure. That's a good place to start. So now we have to find our replacement audio. Because it's a 12-bar blues and because we use the metronome, we should be playing the same thing 12 bars down, which would be at bar 20. So we get ourselves over here to bar 20. And I'm just going to hit play. Another useful keyboard shortcut is the spacebar. The spacebar will play and pause. So you notice it jumps back to the loop because we still have loop or cycle turned on. It will always jump there when you have that turned on, so remember to turn that off. And again, keyboard shortcut is helpful there as well. So we're going to come back to bar 20, and we're going to slice here. Hit with the S key. So we want to grab a one measure chunk from here. So what we're going to do is come to bar 21, and we're going to slice it again. So now we have this nice little section here. We're going to copy that. We just right click, hit copy. And then we're going to come right back here to where we made space for ourselves. And we're going to paste it in. If we did everything well, if I was playing in time to the metronome and played similarly enough the two times, right about now we should have a fairly clean edit. So let's see what it sounds like. And I'm going to solo this track. If you remember, these buttons let us solo or mute a track. I don't want to hear the unedited track, just the one that we fixed. So I am going to solo it and hit play. And here we go. Okay, that was a pretty clean edit. I did notice a slight volume drop where we made the transition from this clip to this clip. So maybe we can fix that. Let's see what we can do about that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Actually, I zoomed in a lot more. That's okay. And now what we want to look for when we're editing is quiet spots in the audio, because this is where we'll be able to make the cleanest edits. We can make sure that there's no pops or cracks or any other sounds. Now I'm playing continuously here, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. If this was a vocal track or a solo instrument, you'd often have pauses between notes, which would be good spots to edit. Here, not so much. So what we're going to do, rather than trying to find a spot that's completely silent, is just find one where the volume is relatively low. So again here, I'm just going to be holding down the control key while I do this, so I don't have to worry about the snap to grid. And around here, things look pretty quiet. So let's see, oh, right around there. Let's see what happens. And here too, I'm going to drag this over while I have the control key pressed. And we're going to take a listen now and see how that sounds. Again, we're going to back up. I could have the cycle on, but I'll leave it off for now. Okay, it's still a little bit noticeable. So maybe, maybe we're going to try to move even further down. Now, if you remember, the problem was fairly close to bar 9. So we can actually trim a lot out of here. Let's go all the way here where it starts to get noticeably louder. And the visuals help a lot here. Okay, so you see this is about a good spot. This looks good. Let's see what we have here. I like the way that sounds. I think that's pretty clean. Remember, this is a guide track. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we don't want to hear an obvious disjointed sound there. I think that's pretty good. So what we have to do now is duplicate what we just did with the other recorded track. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come here to bar 8. And we can do the split. We don't have to do the split in the edit window. We can do either window. I'm just going to hit the S key. And I'm going to drag it over to make a little bit of space, just like we did the last time. And then we're going to go over to... let's do it up here. Another useful keyboard shortcut, now that I'm thinking about it. We can use the arrow keys to move a bar at a time. This is really convenient sometimes. And left or right, using the left and right arrow keys. So here I am at bar 20, highlight the track, S, come over to bar 21, hit it again. And okay, now we can do exactly what we did before, which was right click on it, copy, and then paste it at the new location. Another way to copy a region is to drag it while holding the Alt key, in which case it'll actually drag a copy of our region instead of the original. And that was really easy. So let's take a listen to this in solo and see how it sounds. That actually sounds pretty good as is. I don't think we really need to do much with this. Now, there's another little benefit here of me leaving the edit spots different for the two tracks. If there was some little noticeable artifact at the edit, we don't want to make the edit at the same spot on both tracks because it'll be twice as noticeable. By doing the edits at different points, one will slightly mask the other, so it'll sound a little bit cleaner overall. If we listen to the two together, with any luck, we shouldn't hear the edit at all. Okay, I think that sounds pretty good. So, we've edited out that annoying sound, and it was very easy. Didn't take much work, only took us a few minutes. But now we're stuck with a whole bunch of little pieces. There's nothing wrong with this. It has no effect on the sound at all, but it might be a problem somewhere down the road if we decide to move things around or do any additional editing. So it would be nice if we could somehow combine these into one single chunk. We can. All we have to do is highlight the regions that we want to combine. There's two ways that we can highlight multiple regions. One is by holding the Shift key down as we select them. So I'll just say select this here while I'm holding the Shift key, and you see there are multiple, I made a mistake there. We have multiple regions highlighted, and I can select any ones I want. Another way to do that is by using a lasso technique, where we simply, while holding down the left mouse button, we'll drag the mouse over the regions that we want to select, and they all get selected automatically. Either way it works, whatever, again, you're more comfortable with. We can select multiple tracks even using this technique. The important thing is that you want to start dragging somewhere that isn't on a clip. If I try to start dragging from the clip itself, that's what happens when we don't want to do that. So make sure that you'll see the cursor changes. When we're over the clip, it's a hand, which indicates that we're able to drag. Whereas here it's an arrow, which indicates we're in selection mode. So we always want to make sure that we're seeing an arrow. Now, what if we want some region in the middle here? How do we get in there? Well, we can actually come in here between tracks, and you see it turns into an arrow, and then do the same thing. We can highlight multiple tracks or multiple regions. So that's another way to do it. Anyway, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to drag over these so that every region on that track is selected. Right click, and I'm going to select Merge Regions. And now it combines it all into a single region. There's no evidence at all that this was ever edited. I'm going to do the same with the other track. And there we go. Good as new. Nobody will be any the wiser. They'll think this was all one continuous recording. All right, so we fixed that mistake. We've used a few keyboard shortcuts here. Another thing I want to point out when we're working now, this takes us right to the beginning of the track. And this left arrow, you would think, takes us right to the beginning. It doesn't always. For instance, if I start playing and then pause, play again, and now hit this left arrow, it doesn't go to the beginning. It goes to where we had last paused. This comes in handy sometimes because if we're playing a particular region, want to hear it again, we can just go back and hear it again. And we can do this as many times as we want. What if we actually do want to go back to the beginning though? We click on this twice. The first time will take us back to our last pause point. The second time takes us back to the beginning of the track. So you see, because I had started from the beginning of the track, if I hit this now, it'll go back to the beginning. But if I play, pause, play again, and now hit, it goes to where I last paused. Another way, again, we can use the keyboard for this. We always have the option of using the keyboard, and that is to use the enter key. Anytime we hit enter, it'll automatically take us back to the beginning, regardless of where the playhead was. This is the playhead, what I've been calling the cursor. Will always take us back to the beginning of the track. So that's a good shortcut to know. All right, so we fixed this problem. Let's move on to the next one. What if I had wanted to re-record that bad spot instead of trying to edit it out? That's where we use a technique called punching in. So before I get to that, I'm just going to take a quick break here and I shall be right back. Okay, so we're back. I've created a new track here. It's a simple audio track, it's just my microphone. And I'm going to use this for our demonstration. I've turned on the metronome. I like using the metronome. What can I say? You see how useful it's been so far working with the metronome. It's made editing really easy. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to record myself saying a few words. And I'm going to intentionally make a mistake that we're going to go back and re-record. So I've got my source set up. We're good to go here. I've got my track selected, and so I'm just going to hit record and go along with the metronome, and I'm just going to count to 10. Why not? And just as with everything else we've been doing so far, we can use a keyboard shortcut to record, and that's the R key. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hit R, and before we start, I'm just going to take a quick look at the metronome here. And just as before, I have a 2-bar count in. I don't really need a 2-bar count in for this, but I do like to have one, so I'll make a 1-bar. I've made the metronome sound cat. I don't know why I did that. I mentioned that there are different options that you can use for the metronome sound. I didn't demonstrate any of them, but if you want to hear this one, there you go. There are others. Really, you can go through these and select one that you think will work with your particular style. Next episode, I'm going to show you a few ways where we can get some beats using something other than the built-in metronome. So if you want something that sounds a little bit better, even to the point of getting something that might sound like a real drum beat, watch our next episode because you're going to enjoy that. Okay, so I've got the metronome set up. I'm just going to go back to the default. Why not? And oops, I didn't mean to do that. We're back at the beginning. I'm going to hit record. We're going to have a 4 count count in, and I'm going to count to 10 and hit stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So I recorded myself counting at 10, very exciting. We're just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see it better, and you can pretty much make out the words. So what I'm going to do is I am going to re-record one word here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to replace 6 with 2. All right? So here's where I said 6. And oops. Why I still have my snap to grid on. I'm going to turn it off. So here's where I set it. 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6. All right, so that's what we want to re-record, 6, and it's right roughly here. Beat 2 of measure 2. So how do we go about doing this? Now, easiest way to do it would be using a feature called punching in. Now, a lot of DAWs provide a feature called auto punch, where you can actually specify the point at which you want to start punching in and where you want to start punching out. Bandlab doesn't provide this feature, so we're going to do it manually, just as a demonstration. So what do we mean by punching in? What that means is we're actually going to start playing back. I'm just going to come in a little bit. And when we get to this point here where we want to replace that, let's just back it up a little bit to a little before where I said the word, right around there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start playing back the recording, and when it gets to this point where the cursor is right now, we want to switch from playback to record. Because we have to do this manually, I would have to sit here and click on that red button exactly at the time the cursor gets here, or use the keyboard. Remember that the R key will do the same thing. And then after I've said the 2 to replace the 6, I would have to click record again, or the pause button in order to stop recording. This is a little bit tedious, and it can be easy to get the timing off. Now, if you have a MIDI controller, and we're going to discuss MIDI controllers in an upcoming episode, if you have a MIDI controller, particularly one with a foot control, that makes it a little bit easier because you can just hit that foot controller to turn recording on, turn it off, hit it again to turn it off. And this is great if you're playing an instrument and don't have your hands free, but it still requires manual intervention. So what else can we do? Well, one of the things we can do, if we have the count in turned on, Bandlab will actually start playing, not only count 4 beats, but start playing 4 beats before where the cursor is. So if I hit record right now, watch what happens. Oops, I have cycle on. I didn't want to turn that on. Sorry. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you see, it played back 4 beats and then switched to record, which is exactly what we want to do. Let's try that again. It's not exactly what we want to do because I had the wrong track highlighted. So let's undo and try it again. This is the track we want to re-record, the voice mic track that I just created. But we're going to try the same thing, and let's see what happens. I'm going to hit record. It backs up, plays, and starts recording. The problem is I did not hear my voice. Why is that? It was playing. If I unmute these and try it again, it's obviously playing. So why am I not hearing my voice? Well, as it turns out, Bandlab will not play back the track that you're recording on. It's often convenient to be able to hear what you had recorded previously to make sure that you're in the same frame of mind, in time with your previous recording when you re-record that new part. So what do we do in a case like this where we can't hear our previous recording? Easiest way to do this is to simply make a duplicate copy of our track. We just right click here, select duplicate track, and now we have 2 copies of it. We can be playing back 1 copy while we're recording over the other one. And that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go back and mute these again. And the same thing is going to happen. We're over here. This is the spot where we want to start recording. I'm going to hit record. It should go back 4 beats. Start playing back, and I should hear the copy of our track play back to help guide me. And then I'm going to record the 2 where the 6 should be. So let's give it a try. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so there we go. And you can see I re-recorded here. It was a little louder than my original recording, but we're not too concerned with that right now. Now what I can do again, because I stopped recording, I can just drag back and get my original, that would have been 7, I guess, back. And if we listen to this now, we'll solo this. 5, 2, 7, 8. Okay, that was pretty loud. I don't like that. So we're going to go back and we're going to try it again. 6, 7. And I'm going to hit record. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a little better. All right, and just as before, I'm just going to drag over here to make sure that we didn't overwrite something we wanted to keep from the previous recording. I'm going to solo this, and 5, 2, 7, 8. Okay, so there we go. It's not the cleanest overdub, I guess, but it's pretty close. Now, one of the things, let's just loop over this section for a second. 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 2. The main problem here is that my timing is a little off. I seem to be rushed. So I can just that sounds a lot better. So again, we can use this to line it up. So my 2 lines up with my original 6 timing, and you see it's right on the beat. Now if I turn this off, turn off the cycle and play it, it should sound a lot better. 4, 5, 2, 7, 8. There we go. So, in a nutshell, this is how we punch in, or at least how we simulate punching in by duplicating our track. Once we've done this, we can get rid of this. We can delete our duplicate. We don't need it anymore. So now we have this little hole here, which we can kind of fill up, because sometimes when you have dead silence, there's something called room noise. Every room has its own sound. It's just the background noise, computer fan going, ventilation, your own breathing, external noises that happen to make their way in. So every room has a particular sound. It's never dead quiet. So when you have these absolute silent parts between tracks, it's noticeable. So you like to fill in those gaps if you can, or there are other ways where we can hide them, but the easiest way, if possible, is to just fill them in with what was already there. 5, 2, 7, 8. Four, 5, 2, 7. So you see, I'm hearing some of what was there before. So what if we back up, and I didn't have enough recorded before. So here's what we can do. We'll leave it quiet. But another little feature, what we'll get to really quickly. So you see what we have here. I had started to talk. Now if we go right to there, that's pretty good. So we are just going to delete this. And again, if this was a proper recording, where we'd have music playing along with this or whatever, that little bit of absolute silence would be hardly noticeable. This is a fraction of a beat. 5, 2, 7, 8. So there we go. And if we had this with the music, 5, 2, 7, 8, 9. So there we go. That's how we punch in. And this is how we correct timing. This is really just a matter of dragging this to where we want it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 7, 8. And there we go. So that covers all the basics, I think, for this episode. And again, if we wanted to, we can join up these pieces. A couple of other things. I mentioned a lot of keyboard shortcuts. They're available here in the help menu. There are others that we didn't discuss this episode. You can look them over. You can pop in there anytime if you need to refresh your memory. A lot of these are really useful. Some less so, but they come in handy once in a while. And we'll probably discuss those later on as we start using these other features. So I think that wraps everything up here that we wanted to talk about. I am just going to pop back into the main screen and give a summary, and I think we've done what we intended to do. I'll be right back. All right. So, as promised, we went over the few more features of the mix editor, how to edit out mistakes, how to record over mistakes, and we talked about a few of the keyboard shortcuts available to us to help speed things along if you're like me and like using the keyboard. If you don't like using the keyboard, you always have the option of sticking with the menu and the mouse, whatever works for you. So, I think that wraps it up. Next episode, We're going to go into looking at replacements for the metronome because the metronome just sounds terrible. It's really uninspiring, and one of the reasons people hate it is just because it sounds so machine-like. So we're going to look at alternatives to it, even going to the extent of creating full-blown drum beats for ourselves. So come back next episode, and don't forget, everything that we work on here is available on my Bandlab page. Just head over there, fork the project, take a look at it, play with it. Don't forget, subscribe to my channel so that you're always kept up to date about all the new videos I'm releasing. And I'll be seeing you soon. Take care. Hey man, pass that over, man. Yeah, all right. Oh,